Dr. Connie, it is so good to see your face. Where are you today?
I am speaking to you from my new office in Scottsdale, Arizona. I just moved into a newer, more modern space after selling my building up north that I had for 18 years. It's got fresher, younger energy. It's closer to a lot of my patients. I just saw patients this morning, so this is the end of the day. It's good. It's a good time to talk.
You have an amazing background. Let's just, before we get into your current project, tell us a little bit about your background.
I am an atypical doctor. Education-wise, I got my undergraduate at UC San Diego, and then I went to the second class and matriculated at the military medical school in Bethesda, Uniformed Services School. I graduated in 1981. And as part of that payback, you serve over 20 years active duty. I served 24 years active duty. I got my training in internal medicine. I was stationed at numerous duty stations like Port Hueneme, California. And the rest of the time, actually most of the time, was at the White House. I was White House doctor from 1992 to 2001. I started off as the Navy doctor to George Herbert Walker Bush, and that was in his last year of presidency. And the remaining 8 years, I was the physician to the president to President Clinton. It was a very different time in history. I retired as a rear admiral, the first Filipino-American U.S. history to become a Navy Rear Admiral, and that was in 2001. I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. I worked for the Mayo Clinic for about 3.5 years in executive health, and then I branched out and I formed my private practice, Center for Executive Medicine in Scottsdale about 18 years ago. I'm still practicing at 69. I'm still seeing patients, still active, and you keep your professional life going. It keeps you young.
It's an amazing background. The way you present this, it just seems so matter of fact, but it's really quite something. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to now, because it's important.
This is an interesting timing for this podcast. Today would have been my 14th wedding anniversary to my second husband, who was the love of my life. I was married 29 years to my high school sweetheart. He was the father of my 2 kids, but, we grew apart and that marriage just, went away. We parted amicably in 2008. And as soon as I was free, one of my former patients from the Mayo Clinic found out I was going through a divorce and said, marry me, right before his physical, which was quite interesting. So he was the CEO of a company in Indiana. We got married 1.5 years later. After that physical, I said, you need another doctor. I can't be your doctor. And we had an amazing life. When you interviewed me in 2016 for your magazine, we were in California at one of his conferences where he flew airplanes for fun. He loved aviation. He loved it so much. That was his passion. He ran companies. He retired, at the age of 60. And he traveled while flying his planes. And his biggest passion was sailplane competitions, gliders. And it's quite interesting. You're in Utah, and he crashed his glider in the nationals competition July 1st, 2019. And I was on the ground waiting for him. And that began my journey as a widow. And I think as a physician, I look back at death, and I'm an internist, and we take care of adult patients. And most of our life as an adult patient physician, we're the ones who gives the bad news. We're the one who says you've got cancer, you've got heart disease. And once or twice a year, you're the one who goes and tells the family, I'm so very sorry to tell you, we did everything we can. We lost your husband, we lost your wife. And so physicians aren't used to being the recipient of those news. So we're typically, I say, I'm usually the widow maker. I'm the one who gives the news. But on July 1st, 2019, I was the recipient of that news that there were no survivors in his crash. He crashed his glider up in the mountains. And I joined the 700,000 new widows in this country every year who joined this club. None of us ever wanted to join. Nobody ever planned that. But I started researching this club that I never wanted to join. And I realized I wasn't alone. When I look at the statistics, 700,000 new widows every year in America, I looked at widowers, and there are about 234,000 of them every year, but we outnumber them about 3 to 1. There are about 11.6 million widows. There are about 3 million widowers in this country. I look at my married patients, David, and when we talk and they complain about their husbands, I said, you're going to miss him. You really should forgive him, whatever he's doing that you want to kill him, because 1/4 of all married women will be widows by the age of 65. I was 64. I was at 1/4. And then half of those remaining will be widows by age 75. The average age of the first-time widow is 57. Half of the widows over 65 will outlive their husbands by 15 years. When we widows die, the majority of us, 80% are single. But it's interesting, married men, 80% are married by the time they die. So there's obviously this disparity. And I started looking at longevity, and I'm supposed to live to 98. So what do you do with your life? And I always say when crisis happens, look at your life and it's your opportunity. How do you become Phoenix rising from the ashes? How do you go from devastating loss? A part of you dies, and how do you become reborn? And I really summarize this widow journey from going from we as a couple, husband and wife, partners. I have gay couples who lost their partners. They suffer just as we do. You go from we to me. And the question is, when I became widowed at, 64, I went, well, who's me? Who am I? Who am I? And so that's the journey I've had since I lost my husband. So it's really introspection. And after he died, what happened next? COVID. You isolate. So I had to really hunker down. And it's been the journey of grief, but I've been grateful. It's been the journey of rebirth. And I've become a better person, I think, as a result of it.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about getting together with other widows.
I laugh because I've become the widow magnet. I run into widows all the time because you'll see women and you go, well, what about your husband? Because, well, he died a couple of years ago. Or I'll go to my hairdresser and she'll go, oh, I've got another widow here. And they want to put you together because, you want to do lunch and you want to visit, or you're here about somebody died. I mean, in the span of 30 days this past spring, I had 5 women I knew. 2 of them were patients of mine whose husbands died. Those are 5 more widows. And I would reach out to them. I would tell them my condolences. I think it just helps to have people who know what you've been through reach out to you because they know. They know. It's that special club none of us ever wanted to join, but here we are. And I think most of my healing has been about through prayer, other widows. I've read some amazing books. I've interviewed Dave Rico from the Esalen Institute, who wrote a wonderful book about 5 true things. And I read that very short, pithy book, but it really helped me look at grieving, about letting go. And I read that over the pandemic. And I thought the gift of the pandemic for me was it forced me not to travel. I was so distracted with traveling and going back and forth. I never fully grieved. You fully grieve when you're home and you realize he's never coming home again. He's never coming back in this life. So what are you going to do with yourself? What am I going to do with myself? And the first year, you're so busy with the paperwork, the estate, the death certificate. Where do I live? Do I move? Your social network changes. So you're inundated. And then I think it hits a lot of women the second year. It's like, we're no longer we. He's gone. He's not coming back. You go through the milestones of your wedding anniversary, his birthday, the holidays, and then everybody says goodbye and you don't see him. They all fade away. But your widow friends remember. One of my widow friends, she lost her husband April 15th. He died of lung failure. She became a first-time grandmother 10 days before he died. So she said, in the span of 10 days, my husband died of 30-some years. He was 63, she was 63. And I check on her. I text her. I'm having dinner with her next Friday. She runs a big company. She runs a company, was owned by them. And she texts me, when am I going to stop crying? I said, you will cry more than you've ever cried in your life. This is where love goes when it has no place to go. You will cry more than ever, but that's okay. It's one step at a time. And the reason I'm going to call my book The Widow's Walk, it comes from the old New England term, or the architectural term of the cupola, the top of the building, where back in the New England shipbuilding days, the captain's wife would walk on the widow's walk above on the roof of the house, looking out to sea, wondering when his ship is going to come home. And he never comes home. And that's the widow's walk. But it also, the metaphor is the widow's walk is a walk. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon, but you walk at your own pace. You can't speed it up. You can't delegate or hire someone to go grieve for me. You have to do the walk under your terms. Nobody can speed it up. We all heal in different ways. I have widows whose husbands have been dying for years, 6 years, 7 years. And then when they do die, they are relieved, they grieve and relieve, and then they find somebody. 80% of widows, they say, within 2 years will find somebody, but not everybody marries. About 16% of widows remarry. 61% of widowers remarry. And we have a phrase among widows: we don't want to be a nurse, we don't want to be a purse. There's a lot of things. One of the things I will plan to do is pitch a TV series to one of your producer friends who lives in Park City. So I won't leak that yet until the deal is done. So I think it's a good reality show about what widows go through. I think it touches a lot of people out there.
You were just back from Canyon Ranch.
I was.
What went on there?
Canyon Ranch in Tucson is well known for a lot of their wellness programs, but they have a very robust grief program, bereavement program. And I reached out to them through one of their members of the board, Dr. Richard Carmona, former Surgeon General of the United States. I had worked with them when we were working on the VA project. And I said, I had this idea. I would like to speak or organize a conference or a retreat, a 5-day, 4-night retreat, and have it open to widows to see who wants to sign up, who wants to spend their time at an all-inclusive resort where they pamper you. You can get massage, facial, but we do 90 minutes each day of meeting in a group with our small group of widows. I go over some informational didactics, but I also talk about the health implications, that the mortality rate, morbidity rate, illness and death in widows in the first 3 months is 60%. You will become...
Wait.
60%.
Say that again? 60% mortality rate?
In fact, it's 66% increased chance of illness or death in widows in the first 3 months. It's 70% in widowers. Widowers die of a broken heart, especially if you've been married over 67 years. You'll hear stories about, the husband died 3 months after his wife did, or the wife died of a broken heart. You hear about them. I have patients who mom and dad died within a month. Mom was getting ready to go to the funeral of dad. She had her heart attack the day of his funeral. They buried them both together. No wonder my doctor friend said, we just want to make sure you're okay. Are you sleeping okay? Are you eating okay? Are you taking care of yourself? Did you let your health go? Did you ignore it? So they are at very, very high risk the first 3 months. So if you've lost if a family member's lost their spouse, check in on them. Check in, because depression is rampant. Drugs, alcohol, anything to escape their pain. They're not really, they're very high risk, very, very high risk. Yeah.
Wow. It makes sense.
Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that, and I researched and it makes sense. I look at my patients who've had recurrence of breast cancer within 3 to 6 months of their husband dying. I go, gee, no wonder. All that stress, and then you missed your mammogram, and now we're finding a mass, and she goes, why? I lost my husband. I go, that's what happened. It's all the stress. Yeah.
What did you learn from that group of women when you were at Canyon Ranch?
I learned that misery loves company. We were from all walks of life, from all parts of the country. The newest widow, the freshest widow, had been widowed 3 months before. And her daughters insisted she come to us. She's from San Francisco, insisted she come to visit us, to be it. And she opened up immediately. She cried. She says, I haven't cried until now. I feel safe with this group. And Canyon Ranch has a bereavement counselor. They have a spiritual advisor. They have an incredible team of people who are used to this. I speak as a doctor, but I also speak as a widow who knows. I've been in your shoes. I've been through that. I know what it's like. And the other widow who'd been widowed longest had been 7 years. She'd moved from Texas to Florida, and she still grieves. She dates other guys looking for the right guy, but she realizes nobody ever replaces your husband. Nobody. Perhaps he has a successor, no replacement. So you don't need to feel guilty. And would he want you to meet somebody? Absolutely, he wants you to meet somebody. People love you, want you to be happy after they're gone. They don't want you to be miserable.
What would you say to someone who's lost someone? How do they get through that first year? Especially the statistic that you just read to me is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
How would you help somebody? What would your advice be to them?
I always tell them this will be the hardest thing you've ever done. It is the hardest thing. It'll be the worst couple of years of your life. I guarantee it is the hardest thing you'll ever done. We all grieve individually on our own terms. And some snap at it, good for them. There are widows who are relieved that he died because they don't have to take care of him. We all heal at different rates, just like our relationships are different. And I think it's all about you now. That's why I tell them, you went from we to me. And the question is, who's me? Who are you now? When was the last time you lived alone? You lived alone, you slept alone. And, you can buy a new house. Most of them are fortunate to have had some money, although 1 out of 10 widows lives in poverty. And that's sad to hear. But who's going to take care of me? What about your health, everyday living? So you will change. So to get through it, you call upon your faith, obviously faith and prayer. If you're severely depressed, go to a professional mental health advisor, bereavement team, go see a doctor, therapist, psychiatrist, get help. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to other widows, join a bereavement group. Be careful because people will scam. Their scam artists will go after widows because you're helpless. There's nobody looking out for you. They'll go after your money. People take advantage of you. They can't because there's no man to protect you. But if you, one day at a time, one step at a time, you will get through it with that. You will get through it. Somebody said you never get over it, but you get stronger. There are days, David, I'm doing perfectly fine, and a song will come on the radio that reminds me of John. And literally, I'm in my car and I'm just weeping. But now the tears are no longer accompanied by, I miss you. They're accompanied by, I love you. I love you and I'm grateful for the time we had together. I'm so grateful that he died doing what he loved to do. And he died in a circumstance that I never saw a body. He never suffered from dementia or chronic illness. He never died of the things my patients die from. I never had to put on my white coat to take care of him. He said, I'm not doing that to you. He crashed his glider. He came home in a casket with the American flag. I did a ceremony for him. We had his service. I spoke it, did his eulogy. I did a celebration for life. I cremated him, cremains. We scattered him. I have his urn. I'll probably take him with me to Arlington one day, but he's always with me. And I tell them that gets to a point, I always say, they're always with you. Your love never dies. And if you believe in soul is always with you. He's with you. And if you believe in mediums, that's a whole different thing about Dr. Connie and Woo Woo. I have an interesting group of friends, and let me know if you ever want to interview them. I have psychics, astrologers, mediums. And without a doubt, every medium who reads for me, my husband, John, comes through loud and clear. Evidential mediums will tell you things only the two of you know intimately. There's no way she could have Googled. She couldn't have read my mind. But I know it's he. It is him. And he is alive and well. And I say he's having the time of his afterlife. He knows what I'm up to. And I said, if you want me to have somebody, you send it and you make it obvious. Meanwhile, I remember one of the dreams that I had of him about 3 months after he died, in which I did not cry when I dreamt it. So they say it's a visitation. And in this dream, David, we used to have a turboprop airplane. He flew. I sat in the right seat. But this time I was in the pilot seat and he was in the right front seat. And we were taxiing on our runway. And he looks at me and he had the most beautiful, bright blue eyes. And he looks at me and he says, remember, sweetheart, when things go rough, keep flying the plane. Don't bail. Don't ditch. Keep flying the plane. And I always remember that. Don't give up on life. Don't give up. You have much to do. And I really have a particular passion for widows because I want to help them. And it really looks at the human journey that ultimately we're alone when we die. That is your one-on-one journey, 100% all of us. Nobody's immune. And how do you approach your mortality? What do you do with the rest of your life? How do you make the most of it? And that's why I love your magazine. When people think, oh, how's old? How old is old? What do you mean old? You have a whole life ahead of you. Every day is a gift. I'm amazed at what the people you interview do. Michael Clinton, who you interviewed, is a friend of mine who I interviewed for his Roar, his book about just reinventing himself. I just love what people do in that stage of life where you've accomplished everything. Now, what am I meant to do? What is my sole purpose? How can I continue to serve, but keep my mind sharp? Because I always say the end game, the goal of old age are two things: good brain, no pain. That's the third book, is on longevity. So I've got lots of books to write, lots of messages, and it keeps me going. Makes life fun. Makes life fun.
What advice would you give me or give people who know someone who's lost someone? So not the widow or the widower, but say we know somebody that, something like this happened. What would you recommend as sort of a way to reach out and what to say and how to listen? And
let them talk. I did a podcast for mothers who've lost their children. I can't think of a more devastating loss than lose your child. Parents aren't supposed to bury their children. They're supposed to bury us. But there's a group they called Parents Helping Parents Heal that meets every year here in Arizona. And it was founded by parents who've lost their children. And they call themselves the shining light parents, because they say these children are their shining light. And I think if you can allow people to just share, because don't be afraid. You're not going to make them cry. And if you make them cry, it does no harm. Because if you ignore their husband or ignore their child, they think you didn't care. I think the biggest insult people had is seeing a friend who probably knew you lost your husband, your child, and they don't say a darn thing. They don't even just say, listen, I'm so sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do? That's all. Just say, I'm sorry for your loss. Or the thing we don't like to hear, well, your little girl's in a better place. Really? You really think so? Really? But it really hurts. So just tell them it's okay to talk. I'm here for you. That's all people want to know. Just let them talk, tell their story. Because when they tell their story, they continue to grieve, they process it. And maybe in the storytelling, you can change the way you feel about that, from severe loss and grief to being grateful, of gratitude that they were in your life, albeit a short time. They were in my life.
We need to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that we should more often, because to my knowledge, nobody's ever made it out of here alive. So,
and only one person came back.
Allegedly.
One person. Well, some of us believe one guy came back.
One guy came back. Okay.
No, they tell me, the mediums tell me it's fabulous on the other side. Let me know. I'll connect you with my psychic who told me my husband would die before 70. Amazing.
Oh.
And she's in her 60s. Interview her, and I'll connect you with my mediums. It'll blow your mind. You will just be amazed. It's a gift.
Dr. Connie, I just find every conversation I have with you to be absolutely fascinating. You're not like anybody else, I got to tell you.
It's funny. Somebody asked me, what's the coolest thing you've ever done, David? You know what it was? I was a judge on the Miss Universe pageant in November of last year.
Wow.
Yeah. I got to do the 2-minute wave in my formal gown, all made up. There were 84 delegates in San Salvador. And we got to interview 84 delegates for the Miss Universe pageant. And it made you look at how tough that business is. It is a tough business. That's whole different language, whole different ambition. We each got to interview each of the candidates for 4 minutes and to see them. And everybody's got a superpower. And those women are tough. By the way, 2 of those candidates were transgendered. I honestly could not tell the difference. It was amazing. It was mind-boggling. Yeah.
So wonderful. The sort of steps and progressions in your life are just extraordinary. And I look forward to the new book and the books after that. And
I'll keep writing. I think people go, why do you still practice? You don't have to work. I said, I'm doing field research. I do research because I learned so many things from patients and the stories. But the bottom line is you can help people. You can help people. You can help relieve suffering. You can explain things. You can help navigate the medical system. You can communicate in terms that they understand. You can be compassionate. And when I can't diagnose things or treat them to the point that we know they're going to die, you can bring in hospice and you can find comfort and peace towards the end. One of my patients I've had for 22 years died last weekend at 91, metastatic cancer. She was too ill to chemo. It was time. And I went to her house and I said goodbye. And it was such a peaceful death. Her children flew out to be with her. They were playing music from the 40s and 50s. Nat King Cole, the song Unforgettable, came on board. And she lit up and she just smiled. And she's somebody who's definitely unforgettable. People in our lives who we've loved, if you can just keep them in your memory. And what is it about them that I learned that I can make it part of me that makes me a better person? You would have lived a good life. Yeah.
Amazing. Dr. Connie, I wish you tremendous success.
Thank you.
With your new widow project. I think this is something that needs to happen, and I'm glad that you're out there leading it.
Yeah, it's the best we can do right now. It's helping each other. So thank you for helping so many of us out there, giving us hope, and the fascinating people who read your magazine and participate. I just smile. I go, wow, there's somebody else who defies aging. I call it raging against aging. You know what it is I don't like stereotypes. I just go and I just bust a stereotype there. It's not what you expected, is it?
It's not. No.
Well, thank you. Come visit us in Arizona when it's cool.
I will. I would love to.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Connie.
All right. Be well, my friend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.